So last month I watched a video on Wilson's barbecue where he did some pulled pork using one of these USA boneless pork butts available in Farmfoods. Swift brand, just like the St. Louis style ribs. And then a couple of weeks later I seen Bold Barbecue UK, he did his video on it as well to get his idea of what he thought of it, and they were both relatively same. You know, it's an average cut, it's okay for the price, but it's just never going to match what you could get at the local butchers or even the online butchers that you can order from. Now, I've never cooked one of these Swift branded pork shoulders before, so this is a new one for me, but I am going to take on board their feedback and try and address those negatives that they had in their video and hopefully turn it into, you know, a more viable option really. So the pork shoulder has now been in the fridge for 48 hours. It's still a little bit frozen in the middle, a little bit firm, but I'm not cooking it for another 24 hours. Now, just like any other low and slow, there's quite a few options where I'm going to have to make a choice. Things like, do I wrap or do I spritz? Do I use a binder? And I'm going to give you the reason as to why I've made the choice, so you understand why I'm doing it that way. I don't believe that there is one way that makes the absolute best pulled pork or brisket or anything like that. I think it's all down to personal taste and preference, and understanding the reasons why you want to make those choices, I think, is more important than just blindly following someone else's method. While it can be good to follow someone else's method as a starting point, once you get more comfortable, you want to be starting to make these different choices. Some of these choices I will make in advance before I even start the cook, and some I will make depending on how the cook is going, whether it's drying out too quickly or it's not drying out enough, etc. If you want more details about these different choices and whether they actually matter or not, I've got a friend who is an absolute wizard at explaining this kind of stuff. I will link a video in my description. Hopefully I'll try and do it on the screen, but I've not learned how to do that yet, so we'll see if that happens. But yeah, his video is quite new. It's literally the day before I decided to make this video, although it'll be a couple of weeks old by the time I get this video edited. The first choice I make is what to do with that fat cap, and I've decided I'm going to take the whole lot off. Based on what I've seen of theirs, there was just way too much fat for my liking, and I don't think it needs it. I think there's enough internal fat to carry this cook through. I'm not going to get rid of the fat cap though. I am going to keep it. I'm going to chop it up into small pieces. I'm going to put it in a drip tray and let it render out underneath the meat, catching any more fat going in. I may be able to use that later on if it does start drying out. I can just pour it on the top, and hopefully that should address the too much fat problem. So the next step is to dry brine it. I'm just going to use these Malden sea salt flakes, and I'm going to put on quite a bit more than I normally would. Obviously there's the risk of over seasoning, but based on this being relatively weak in meaty flavours, I just want to give it that little bit more salt, more seasoning, and hopefully that'll bring it out that little bit more. And once that's all salted up, I'm just going to stick it on a wire rack in the fridge 24 hours. As this is going to be an overnight cook, I'm not going to use the charcoal plate, ash plate at the bottom. I'm just going to use the basket. Now I like to use the fire plate because it does offer a little bit more efficiency in the cooking, but it does carry that small chance of airflow blockage. Without it, that basically eliminates that chance of airflow getting blocked. Now, speaking of the charcoal basket, I'm actually going to be using two for this cook. The first one is a tiny little one, which is designed to be used as part of the firebox instead of the cast iron plate in the bottom. And then I'm going to sit the main one on top of it. What this does, it allows me to get one or two extra blocks in underneath the charcoal basket, allowing me to get even more smokiness into it. If I don't use this, sometimes the blocks catch, sometimes they don't. But when I do use this, because it lifts it up and they're practically touching the bottom of the basket, they burn every single time and it works a treat. Now I can't see much value in this product if you've got like the Big Joe or the Le Chef version, because you should be able to fit loads in that. But for the classic size, it does work an absolute treat. It means I'm not prematurely burning through these smoking chunks before the food goes on. As this is an overnight cook as well, I'm going to hand load all of the charcoal into the basket with the wood smoking chunks at the bottom. It does take a lot longer, but it allows me to build the charcoal basket exactly how I want it to, and I can reduce the chances of ash build-up or blockages or anything like that. Now you will notice that I'm going to light the hotspot towards the front centre of the kamado, and this is just because time and time again it always burns from the front towards the back. It also allows me to keep the hotspot away from those chunks of smoking wood and stops them lighting prematurely, wasting that valuable smoke. Also, by the way, I am going to be using some whiskey oak wood chunks. The target temperature for this cook is going to be 250 degrees Fahrenheit or roughly 121 degrees Celsius, if that's what you prefer to use. And it's going to be that same temperature all the way through, nice and simple. So I've just gone with a straightforward simple barbecue rub that I've made myself. No salt in this because I've done a dry brining process. It's one of the reasons why I prefer to make my own rubs as and when I need it. I will put in the description the quantities and what I've actually used for it. One of the other choices I made was to inject this. Now I don't want to put butter in the injector and add more fat into it because I just don't think it's going to need it. I'm doing the injector to add more flavour into the middle of the meat because that's generally where it would be less flavour than on the outside when the bark is. American mustard as a binder, purely because it's dry brined. The skin is a little bit dry in places, so this is just going to ensure that it does stick. You're not going to taste the mustard, it's just purely acting as glue to stick the rub to it. kamado has now been at target temperature for roughly an hour. I like to leave it for an hour when I'm doing a nighttime cut, especially when I'm using one of these controllers as well, just to ensure that it's going to be stable throughout the night and I'm not up and down. So it's now currently 10:30 PM and it's time to get this cook started. So first up, fat cap in a drip tray, underneath catching the extra fat. I'm also going to put some hot water in, help it render out. If I need it, I can add it back to the pork later on when I wrap it, or even after I've pulled it. It's just there as a fail-safe really, but I don't think I'm going to need it. Okay, so that's now going to start cooking. I'm going to stop up for an extra half an hour or so, maybe an hour, just to keep an eye on it and make sure it's nice and stable before I go to bed. But yeah, I'll see you in the morning. So this morning at 3 AM, sod's law kicked in. I got an alert saying that the ambient temperature had dropped down to 222 degrees Fahrenheit. So I got up to have a look and it turns out the charcoal burnt exactly as I said, from the front right to the very back. However, it didn't catch the left or right side. So there was a nice neat burnt line right down the middle. I just basically give it a stir, bundled them more to the middle, put everything back in, and it shot back up to 250. And after half an hour, while it was stable, I just went to bed then. I then got up at 8 AM and here we are, still holding a good temperature, so 250.9 degrees Fahrenheit. That's good enough for me. Could be better, I suppose. The other thing I did at 3 AM is I noticed the bark on it was very dry, and I didn't want to be getting up at 4 o'clock and then 5 o'clock and then 6 o'clock in the morning to spritz it, so I just wrapped it there and then. The temperature was a bit low though, it was only about 140 degrees Fahrenheit internal. I normally like to wrap it around that 170 to get a really good bark development on it, but yeah, I didn't want to spritz it, so I wrapped it in the paper. So the fireboard is now reporting this as 195 degrees Fahrenheit internal temp. So I'm going to take it out and have a look at it. Look at how much juice is on that, and that's on the top as well. That's a lot of juice. It's quite soft in some areas, it's not quite probe tender. However, what I'm going to do now is take it out of the paper and leave it unwrapped for the remainder. And this should hopefully just dry that bark up a little bit more. Okay, that bark has dried out a little bit. Obviously it's not a great bark, but that's because I wrapped it too early. So that's coming off now. It's really super tender. I actually struggled getting it off without it falling apart. Managed to do it in the end. Now, I'm not going to add any of those juices into this anymore. I'm just going to wrap it as it is. Just for you guys, what I did was I tasted some of that oil on its own, just with a spoon, and surprisingly, I couldn't taste any meaty flavour whatsoever. All I could taste was like a really subtle, diluted, the flavour from the Injector, basically. That's all I could taste. no meatiness whatsoever. It's almost like it was an artificial fat cap or something. While there was lots of fat, it doesn't really have any flavour to it, which is not a very good first impression, if I'm to be honest with you. So now that's wrapped, I'm going to just put it in the oven and hold it at a temperature for about 2 hours or so until I'm ready to eat. It is about 2:30 now in the afternoon, so total time was roughly about 16 hours. Probably lost a little bit of time because I had to take it out and sort out the charcoal at 3 AM, and that's probably added a bit of time back onto it, but still plenty of time before ready to eat this. Okay, so now for the bit you've been waiting for. As you can see, there's juices still seeping through this paper, even when I had it in dry. Smells really good though. Check that little pocket of fat there. Yep, definitely rendered out. Let's go for it. Yep, nice and soft. Pulling really easy. A nice smoke ring to it as well. Gorgeous smoke ring on that. Let's give it a taste first. We'll start with a nice piece from the middle where there's no smokiness whatsoever. Let's see what that's like. So I've got to say it's better than I expected, especially after trying that oil. It's pretty good, that. Yeah, that's good, that is good. It's not the best, but it is good. Still, I'd say there is a slight lacking flavour of the meat, but it's not as bland as I was expecting it to be. I think the main suspect is the fat not having any flavour in it. If I was to pour a load of fat in this and make it super juicy so it looks amazingly good on camera, I think it would just dilute the flavour out of it and make it really bland, because there's no flavour in it. I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to leave it as is, because I think that is as good as it's going to get. Looks like a decent pulled pork butty though. Certainly the look is right. So the big question is, would I recommend this? I'd recommend trying it at least once, unless you do get a lot of pork shoulders from your butchers. Then I wouldn't bother even trying this, because you're not going to like it. You're just going to be disappointed, I suppose, or underwhelmed by it. You're just going to have jump through hoops to add other flavours to it to make up for that lack of meaty flavour. But if you do prefer super sticky, saucy pulled pork, by adding the sauce in as soon as you've pulled it, then you can't go wrong for that style, because that's going to mask some of the meaty flavour anyway. I think it'd be great for beginners if you're not 100% certain on it, or if you want to start doing overnight cooks so you've not really done any before. It's going to hold its own. I mean, the butcher's ones are forgiving anyway, but this is even more forgiving. This is pretty much guaranteed to not run dry at all. Maybe the bark will go a little bit dry, but you can just spritz it. I don't even think you'd need to wrap it, especially if you leave that fat cap on. Well, I don't think there's anything else to be said really, apart from, you know, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you'll come back for some more videos in the future.